My name's Shibe, and my forthcoming album for Pentatone Records is called Vesper. It's a sort of portrait, I suppose, of what the literature for the classical guitar in the 21st century looks like, very specifically from the UK. This is not an album of banger tunes one after the other, each of which will be streamed fantastically. This is, I think, something that I've tried to put together very, very carefully to sort of set out, as I said before, I guess like a kind of manifesto for what the guitar can do in the first quarter of the 21st century. Peter Maxwell Davies once said that he felt that contemporary works were often not placed in the right context for their appreciation, not the right foil for them to be heard with, I suppose, the most open mind. I've been playing the construction for guitar by Sir Harrison Birtwistle for some years now, and I've been playing Thomas Adès' Forgotten Dances since it was written for me in October 2023. Both of these composers create new sonorities for the instrument. So these are not kind of, conservative composers. These are not guitarist composers who are writing very idiomatic music. They're composers who, probably slightly by dint of them not being guitarists, have created sonorities that have not been heard before and creating ways of writing for the instrument that are often ridiculously challenging. If I look back to one of Bream's greatest commissioning triumphs, the 5 Bagatelles by William Walton, I could compare that to Britten's Nocturnal, which is really efficiently written, exquisitely crafted. William Walton's 5 Bagatelles, though, they really stretch the instrument. In some places you think, how possible is this? The metronome mark in the 5th and final bagatelle, for instance. But I think it was with a piece like that other composers said, this is what's possible. I can push the instrument further. And that's where something really exciting lies. The question of the composer's voice is a really pertinent one, perhaps especially as the editions are now being prepared for Forgotten Dances, which should be available at the end of 2025. And there's a lot of conversation about, well, how much are we including here of like things that I've found useful that he said to me, like in the first movement, Overture, Queen of the Spiders, there's this ascent in fourths on the 2nd and 1st string, and he said to me something like, this is like the spiders moving forward suddenly, how they move, it's like nothing, and then very, very sudden shooting forward, and it ends on this kind of ultra Ponticello staccato stack of fourths on the bass strings, and he was like, that moment is fatal for the fly. And I've thought about that as I'm playing it and learning it, and it really helped with me actually interpret that, I suppose. And I think it's actually information that will be pertinent to people who are learning the music in the future. But do you actually write that in, right? How much do you hold onto that kind of almost anecdotal stylistic information? And it's kind of an ongoing question. I suppose that you have to have some distance at some point from what the composer wants. And not in this case, but certainly in other cases of working with composers, there have been points that they're after something on the guitar. They've written down an instruction, and it may end up that that's actually not. It's as if they are sometimes trying to solve the problem of the guitar or the problem that the guitar proposes, problems of sustain or dynamic projection, through sometimes overcomplicating it, and I think it's that distance is something that has taken, in my experience, like practice to understand how to cope with. I very much feel the legacy of other people who have inspired me, people like Forbes Henderson, who was the one who told Harrison Birtwistle, maybe, if you're struggling for inspiration, then maybe look at that little piece you wrote for Silas, one of his sons, which was a guitar in white hand, a 90-second piece for solo guitar that is included on the album. This formed the kind of fundamental, the basis of Construction, the larger 17-minute piece that was commissioned by the Julian Bream Trust. So there are two figures who are really important, and I think those are the figures that inspire me, I suppose, not the kind of incredibly elegant, finessed competition winners, of which there are many who I look. There's some admiration there, of course, as well. But I think both Forbes and Julian Bream, they are people who I suppose I feel like they sacrificed a lot, you know, to pursue what they thought was meaningful. And of course, you know, it's not like it didn't pay off. It's not kind of a totally tragic sacrifice. I feel like the guitar needs constant justification for its existence. I guess, you know, I'm trying to just create things that I would like to see. I'm trying to create a career that I want to be a part of, right? And that means working with new composers. I think it's also, there's a degree of responsibility. That there are great composers who have not been compelled by the instrument. And, you know, I'm not saying, oh, I'm so great that a composer should want to write for me. It's more just that, you know, they need to be asked sometimes 3 or 4 times. And sometimes you're just you're less of the right person, but more in the right place at the right time to be asking them that they're open to it. So I guess I feel part of, I don't know, you feel like part of history or part of a community of people who think that's an important thing to do. I hope that people will listen to this and think, I didn't know that there was so much variation in such a short period of time on an instrument that is so small and only has 6 strings and, you know, 19 frets up it. I think within this instrument, through this repertoire, is implied universes.